Hello, friends. This is Al. We're in Philadelphia. This is week 5. And here in Philly, it is a lovely day, a beautiful day. And I'm going to say hello to everybody, and then we're going to get started. We're going to go around and collect favorite poems of the week 5, which is a complicated week because it's divided into 4 segments. But so it goes. Want to do a couple of announcements, and then we'll get started with favorite poems and saying hello to everybody. The phone number today is on your screen, or will be on your screen, or periodically will be on your screen, but I'll tell it to you anyway. 267-838-9492. That's the number you would call, and you have to enter the following code, 649-255-633, number sign, or hashtag. And when you do that call, oh yeah, we didn't test that mic. When you do that call, Chris Martin is the gatekeeper. He's generally an easy gatekeeper. Today's going to be a harder gatekeeper because we're gonna take calls in about 20 minutes when we've done our round of favorite poems. Then we're going to take some calls from couple of CTAs who are going to call together. If you want to be a third among those CTAs, just call and Chris will handle it. Okay, that's that. We also have a webcast. We have our webcast discussion thread. I see it's already busy, so participate in that. And Sophia DeRose will be looking at that. And you can also post to the discussion thread in the forums, the webcast subforum. I sent a link to that last night. And Dave, would you keep an eye on that? I know there's at least one comment in there that I saw. Couple of announcements. Next week, our live webcast will be on Thursday, not Wednesday. And that is, Lainey Brown, check me if I've got the date wrong. It is Thursday, October 9 in New York in the evening. I think we said 6:30. Okay, fantastic. And I sent information about the location. If you are in New York, or you're leaving by then. You're going to be gone. Oh, too bad. If you're in New York or near New York or would like to travel to New York, please write to Sophia DeRose. Or you can write to Modpo at Writing if you can't find Sophia's email. And we will happily take your RSVP for that event. There's a limit of 30 people. Okay? All right. Yes, I just wanted to show and tell this book by Liz Willis. Is new, and I just wanted to Lion Taming in America. It's a brand new book, New Directions Press, and I'm holding it up for a couple of reasons. One, it's great. 2, very likely I'm going to read a poem from it at the very end for my final words. And 3, the same Liz Willis, who's a very close friend of the Writers' House, will be a Writers' House Fellow in the spring. Lainey, offhand, I think it's February, right? February. Lainey's nodding. February, Liz will be here. All right? I also wanted to say that the beloved Anthony Watkins has sent us a stack of his chapbooks, and he's happy to give them away gratis. So if you are interested in getting a copy of one of his books, please just let us know in any of our communications channels, and we will happily pay for the postage and send those to you. Okay, saying hello to people. First of all, Lainey Brown in a box. Lainey Brown in Zoom. Hello. Lainey. Hi. Lainey is nursing a broken toe and therefore is not running around at the University of Pennsylvania.
That is correct.
But resting up for our big trip to New York.
Yes, so, can't wait.
Good to see you. And I see you every day, but whatever. Kate Colby, hello.
Hi there.
Let's find a synonym for that space. I think we've used grotto isn't the right word. Too much sun. It is Garrett. Any others? No other synonyms?
Crawl space.
Crawl space. Wait, crawl spaces are usually in the bottom of the house.
That's behind me in that door.
Oh gosh, what's there? Have you been there lately?
Not lately.
This house is very old. Do you mind saying what year it was built?
1809.
Holy shit. 1809.
Hmm.
Must be really easy to keep up an 1809 house. Everything's probably structurally very sound. No termites in those hundreds of years?
No problems whatsoever.
Okay, great. What about mansard? Mansard. What does that mean?
Isn't that a type of roof?
That's a roof.
Like,
Okay. That might be a mansard roof behind you. Also, here with us today, we are more than overjoyed, overjoyed, super overjoyed, hyperjoyed to have with, with us Amber Rose Johnson. Dr. Johnson, hello. How much love do we feel for you? It would fill the mansard roof defined space and then explode outward from the many windows out into the streets of Providence, which is a beloved place for you, as it turns out. Yay.
Yes.
Hi, Amber Rose.
Hello, Al, and
We are
all.
so happy to have you join us again. And you are a big-time professor in Montreal, and that explains why your many friends and fans in ModPo are thinking, we want more of Amber Rose. Well, Amber Rose is damn busy doing stuff.
It's true, but I had an impromptu summer ModPo session, so shout out to all the folks that came and met with me once a month over the summer. That was a lot of fun.
That was really great. Yeah, I'd love to do more of that in the future. Dave Poplar in Arizona, where he does not care about the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, I'm wearing their minor league affiliate, the Hillsboro Hops shirt, though.
The Hops?
But yeah, I don't care.
Wait,
I
Hops?
care about Hillsboro Hops. Yeah,
Hops, as in hops, barley, corn, and beer?
Yep.
But can you grow hops in Arizona?
Well, it's in Hillsboro, Oregon. That's
Okay.
where their minor league
I
franchise.
see.
But you don't want to talk
hops.
about other baseball teams for some reason?
I'm not interested in your base. I'm on strike now, insofar as the Major League Baseball is concerned. And drifting down to Atlanta way, we have the return of another beloved friend, longtime friend of ModPo, Kamara Brown. Hello, Kamara.
Hello, Al. Hello, all. Good to be here.
It's so good to see you. Really, I can hardly explain it. This is a reunion tour because Gabby Ojeda Segay is joining us from Illinois, a bastion northern Illinois, a bastion of sense and sensibility.
Something like that. Hi, it's nice to see everybody, and it's nice to see Kamara and Amber Rose, especially who I haven't seen in a long time. So hello.
Yes, here's Gabby. And Gabby just wants everybody to know that he is looking for fun employment.
Yeah, if you happen to just be on a search committee for an academic job, like
Well,
hit
listen,
me up.
man, ModPo people are everywhere. There are some serious academics who are part of ModPo, and it's time for them to come forward and bespeak the utter brilliance. This is not an exaggeration of Gabby Ojeda Segay. Anybody who's been involved in ModPo in the last bunch of years knows how incredibly improvisationally brilliant Gabby is. Okay, enough of that. And Jason, hello, Jason. How are you?
Hello.
Good to see
I'm
you.
okay.
Good, great. And here at the table, we have a very, very special guest who has joined us from the aforementioned Sonoma County, Glen Ellen, California. But she is a world dreamer and world traveler, more of a dreamer than a traveler sometimes. But she's here for about a week, a little more than a week, mostly in New York City. But she's here in Philly at her beloved Kelly Ryder's house. Let's give it up for Sophia Nas. Oh, look at them. Hello, my friend.
Hi, Al. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here.
How are you?
I'm feeling absolutely wonderful to be here.
Can I embarrass you and just say that Sophia DeRose took a photo of us and we both decided that we look younger and younger every time we see each other?
I think that's great. I wasn't embarrassed at all.
Okay, great. Sophia, of course, is a longtime ModPoer and a community TA and a relatively frequent visitor to this space. We've done some recordings in the studio. We're very, very happy to have you anytime. And you are a wonderful poet. And I think at the end, I might ask you, or toward the end, I might ask you to read a poem. Sophia has been writing political poems of the last, in the last decade or so, but especially in the last year or so. And I'm hoping that you'll read a pointed political poem called Real ID. And the word real is just like food for Sophia Naz's Niedekerian, Dickinsonian, Armantroutian wit.
Thank you, Al.
And there's something else special that's going on. Because if we were in Pakistan, which is Sophia's home place, a place of origin, if we were in Pakistan right now, it would be the 2nd of October, and it would be, and indeed is there right now, Sophia's birthday. It's Sophia's birthday! Sophia's birthday. Okay, all you funny people in the chat, you can't sing happy birthday in the chat, but you can do texty stuff to celebrate. And I know there's a delay, but we want to see that starting to scroll. Okay, everybody turn your mics on. This is going to blow the audio people away. Everybody on the Zoom, turn your mics on. We're going to sing happy birthday totally out of sync.
Oh my gosh.
Has anybody ever sung on Zoom? It really doesn't work. It
doesn't work at all.
Amber Rose. All right, a 1 and a 2 and a 3. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
To you.
Happy
Happy
birthday
birthday to you. It's all off. Happy birthday, dear Sophia Naz, one of the great poets living in the continental United States and originally from Pakistan and dreamer of living in Sri Lanka someday. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you so much.
That was so embarrassing, but wonderful. Okay. And there's one other person. Sophia Durose. Also looking younger and younger.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, good. What we're going to do is we're going to go around and we're going to get favorite poems of the week, which is really just a chance for us to stimulate conversation. And then Sophia Durose will cut them up. We've even got scissors. Yeah, scissors. And put those titles into the cup, and then we will pick randomly. And that is the way we've been going lately. In earlier years, somehow the moderator, mostly me, would get to decide what to talk about. I think those days are long over. I think it's more important for random choice. And speaking of random choice, I'm just about to post a video that is the final Canon Challenge video. And this one would be for week 9. I'll make sure I announce it. And the week 9 Canon Challenge video consists of me quoting from ModPo people about whether in this era of the ascendancy of artificial intelligence and large language models, week 9 is outdated. Is our week 9 outdated? And you'll be happy to know that the consensus of the people who've responded is, no, we've been talking about all these issues all along, so we're good. Which is nice because I don't really feel like revising week 9. Okay, let's go to Lainey Brown first, followed by Kate. Suggestions for favorite poems of the week.
I'm going to say Evie Shockley's A One-Act Play in ModPo Plus because it's just brilliant, playful, concise, prose poem-ish piece that is seriously confronting racism and race relations using language in such an interesting way.
Evie Shockley, such a good choice. Thank you, Lainey. And okay, Kate is up and Amber Rose is on deck.
I choose Boy Breaking Glass, which I love. And it shows that a political poem can still plumb and question and play with language.
Perfect choice. And it has long been a favorite. And it's in the main syllabus, I think, which is really great. Okay, fantastic. Amber Rose, followed by Dave Poplar.
I am going to put on the table Langston Hughes' Dinner Guest Me.
Wow.
I love this poem a lot, and I feel like it gives us a slightly different vantage point than some of other poems by Hughes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he's speaking about a scenario that I could experience right now in 2025. So yeah, I love the kind of timeless element of this poem.
Have you taught that poem around a seminar table?
Not outside of a
Not outside of
Modpo
Modpo.
context.
Yeah, exactly. I think we should, for me, that poem is the most meta-pedagogical poem, because if you're having a discussion around a seminar table, depending on who you are leading the discussion, you wind up reenacting the problems that that poem discloses. I just think it's the most meta-pedagogical. I kind of hope it gets picked, though we have talked about it a lot in our various webcasts. It's really important. So even if it doesn't get picked, I would like Modpo people out there everywhere to think about it as meta-pedagogical. We're going to define that term for everybody. And then I also think that you should start looking through Modpo Plus in particular, but other poems, and think about other meta-pedagogical poems. Then I would love to call upon Lainey Brown to recruit me or someone else to lead a slow poem mini course about meta-pedagogical poems. We would sort of select them. Or maybe, Lainey, we should just teach a course, you and I, here in person, which is all about meta-pedagogy. Anyway, who wants to try to define meta-pedagogy? Oh, God. Sophia DeRose, define meta-pedagogy. First of all, say it. Say the adjective meta-pedagogical.
Meta-pedagogical.
Again.
Meta-pedagogical.
Meta-pedagogical, meta-pedagogical. Okay, go ahead. Define.
I think of it as the text teaching you how to read it and teaching you how to
teaching.
Yes. So as you learn the text, you learn something about teaching the text as well.
So meta-pedagogy can be, it doesn't have to be a classroom education or a reference to schooling, but it should be a reference to the state of teaching and learning. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes it does mention a school. For instance, I would say that John Ashbery's poem, What is Poetry? You know, because what gets combed out, in school, the thoughts get combed out. And what is left is like a field. And at the end of the poem, there's at the end you get what? Bouquets, as if basically you're graduating from the school where all the thought got combed out. So even that is meta-pedagogical. Okay, great. Thank you, Amber Rose. Dave is on deck, and Dave is up, and Jason is on deck.
I don't mean to be contrarian.
Never.
But I'm going to pick Mending Wall, which is kind of funny to be contrarian to Modpo by picking a poem in the Modpo syllabus. But I like Mending Wall as a good argument in response to modernism, because I think it does a good job of sort of poking fun at blindly following tradition, but still makes a case for how tradition and form can be instrumentally useful.
I think you're totally right. We may ultimately come down on the other one side of the wall or another on this poem, you and I, but this poem, Mending Wall, strikes me as one of the most relevant poems. I mean, Lainey would make a case for the poem that she picked being absolutely relevant, as would Amber Rose. They're all relevant this week. But that one really relevant because literally we are in a situation where some people are advocating that the best thing we can do to separate people is to build a wall, right? I mean, this is literally part of the polity right now. And that changes people's views on Frost. And of course, it's the only poem that does that, one of the few poems in Frost that actually does that. So great, thank you, Dave. Jason is up, and Sophia Na's birthday person is on deck.
Let's see. I would also go with Boy Breaking Glass.
Boy Breaking Glass, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, can think about that in relationship to mending wall. I mean,
Oh, wow.
they stand against each other in a way.
I love that. Can I suggest, Sophia, that if either of those poems gets picked, that we try to talk about them in relation, just to remind us? I think that would be good. I think it's a great suggestion, Jason. Okay, Sophia Nas is up, and Gabby is on deck.
Well, Boy Breaking Glass is also my choice.
Okay, add another slip for Boy Breaking Glass.
Especially that last stanza of it is, I just feel it's definitely speaks to our current moment, you know.
Okay, so that's another vote for that. Did I put somebody on deck? Yes, Gabby is up, and Sophia DeRose is on deck.
I've been on a Rookheiser kick, so I would say the Ballad of Grape and Orange.
Wow, Rookheiser. I don't think we've ever talked about Rookheiser in a webcast. Does
Oh,
anybody
really?
remember doing that? And we
I
have,
don't know.
I don't know.
It doesn't come up often with us, but you know what? I think it would be good.
Yeah, and we recently released a new poem talk on Rookheiser, which I thought was really good, if I do say so myself. So I love it. Rookheiser, cool. Okay, good. Great. So Sophia DeRose is up, and Kamara is on deck.
I'm gonna go with. Actually, I'll also go with Mending Wall.
Whoa.
Which is something I've never said before.
You're being rather Frostian today.
I've never read this poem generously, if I'm being honest, until this year. And I feel like reading it a little bit more generously gave me something more out of it.
Wow. I think it is a great way to talk about week 5. It's not the typical way of talking about week 5, but it is a great way to do it, because what's at stake is whether there is something intersubjective that can be accomplished when you have the ritual of maintaining boundaries that separate people. And the ritual, which is of course a poetic thing in itself, aesthetic, is a reason for convening. So it's almost weird, conservative, progressive politics. It's a conservative take on progressive education. Ha! Okay. Kamara is up. And then, Sophia, I'll ask you to take a survey of what the live stream is saying, see if there's some other suggestions. And I also want to say to the callers that this would be a good time to connect with Chris Martin, if you haven't already, by calling the number that's on the screen. Okay, Kamara Brown.
Well, I'm glad that I'm going towards end because I didn't realize you could double vote poems. Okay, so now
Wait,
thank you for exampling.
Okay.
Giving that example because I'm going to do a double vote for dinner guest me. I was reading this poem this morning and reminded of how it makes me feel seen in a lot of ways and uncomfortable, and I am thinking about the capitalization a lot, so would be loving to talk about that.
Okay, so it is going into the cup. Sophia, you've got many things you're doing, but can you survey a little bit of what's going on in the chat? Anything fun? Did they sing happy birthday?
We have a lot of happy birthdays for Sophia. We have a lot of love to the TAs joining us. And we have a lot of folks also wanting to talk about Boy Breaking Glass and Mending Wall. Yeah.
Great. Boy Breaking Glass and Mending Wall. So that double. Great. Do you want to put one more slip in for that double, just to allow the people, the populace, to chime in? All right. So Chris has ducked out, so we don't even know if people have called. Is he hiding under the? He's just gone. He's hitchhiking to New Jersey. Okay. All right, Sophia, you're doing a lot of things all at once. Are you capable of multitasking?
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. Let's pick it. Oh, Sophia gets to pick.
Boy Breaking Glass versus Mending Wall.
Okay, we got it. Boy Breaking Glass, Mending Wall. I would love it, Lainey, if you would read Boy Breaking Glass aloud, and then we'll listen to Frost read Mending Wall. It's a little scary, if you ask me. All right, Lainey, read Gwendolyn Brooks, please.
Whose broken window is a cry of art, success that winks aware as elegance, as a treasonable faith, is raw, is sonic, is old-eyed premier. Our beautiful flaw and terrible ornament, our barbarous and metal little man. I shall create, if not a note, a whole, if not an overture, a desecration, full of pepper and light and salt and night and cargoes. Don't go down the plank if you see there's no extension. Each to his grief, each to his loneliness and fidgety revenge. Nobody knew where I was, and now I am no longer there. The only sanctity is a cup of tea. The music is in minors. Each one other is having different weather. It was you who threw away my name, and this is everything I have for me. Who has not Congress, lobster, love, luau, the Regency Room, the Statue of Liberty, runs, a sloppy amalgamation, a mistake, a cliff, a hymn, a snare, and an exceeding sun.
Oh, wow. This is what poetry can do, people. Whew. All right, here's Robert, and for a change of pace, here is Robert Frost, rather elderly at this point, reading the most iambic, by far the most iambic, pentameteristic poem in the Mod Post syllabus, right? Right, here it is. The first line is not iambic, right? I can make it iambic, but the first line is not iambic. Something there is that doesn't love a wall. Something there is that doesn't love a wall is not iambic, but I can make it iambic, and when I do, it becomes Bela Lugosi as Dracula. You ready? Something that is, that does, and love a wall. Gabby's been waiting years for me to. You've heard me do that before.
Thank you. I don't know if you even saw that in the chat for this Zoom. I'd said I need Al to do his Bela Lugosi reading Mending Wall because I think about
Something that is, that does, and love a wall. I like to meet the children of the night. That's not iambic, but anyway, that's something anapestic. All right, here's Bob.
Love a wall that sends the frozen groundswell under it and spills the upper boulders in the sun and makes gaps even two can pass abreast. The work of hunters is another thing. I have come after them and made repair where they have left not one stone on a stone, but they would have the rabbit out of hiding to please the yelping dogs. The gaps I mean, no one has seen them made or heard them made. But at spring mending time we find them there. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill, and on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us once again. We keep the wall between us as we go. To each the boulders that have fallen to each, and some are loaves and some so nearly balls we have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. We wear our fingers rough with handling them. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game, one on a side. It comes to little more there where it is. We do not need the wall. He is all pine, and I am apple orchard. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones on these pines, I tell him. He only says good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder if I could put a notion in his head. Why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I build a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offense. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, but wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it's not elves exactly, and I'd rather he said it for himself. I see him there, bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savage armed. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only, in the shade of trees. He will not go behind his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well, he says again, good fences make good neighbors.
Okay, this has really never happened, I'm sure, in the history of poetic conversation, that Boy Breaking Glass and Mending Wall are being talked about in comparison. I mean, we're setting a record here. Kind of amazing. And so it's a real achievement, I think, that ModPo puts us in a position where we can do this with such familiarity. All right, two things are going to happen next. I'm going to ask 5 people to be willing to speak about this topic. You're going to have to do it, each one is going to have to be brief. I'll tell you who those 5 are so you can get ready, and then we're going to bring in a couple of people by phone. God knows whether they're going to be able to catch up to where we are, but we'll see. Okay. Gabby, Dave, Kamara, Amber Rose, and Sophia Naz. I'd like you to speak about this comparison in that order. Before we turn to you, who's on the phone? Christopher Martin.
Hey, we have 2 great CTAs. We have Paige and Sharon both on the line with us today.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, hello, Paige. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
It's been a little while since we talked, but hello. How is Southern California?
I know.
You're good? So there was a time when you were... Go ahead.
Beautiful and blue and sunny.
Great.
Beautiful and blue and sunny here in SoCal.
And there was a time when you were teaching online, and that's one of the reasons you connected with ModPo in the first place.
That's absolutely right. And ModPo changed the way I teach. I'll never be able to express my gratitude enough.
Oh, well, we feel gratitude toward you because I believe it was 2012, the first year that you joined, or 2013.
Yeah, 2012. I've been here since the beginning.
Amazing. Well, great to hear your voice. And also, Sharon is on the phone. Is it Sharon Wells?
It's Sharon Wells.
Sharon, hello. Are you out on the boat? Are you in the canals?
No, home now. Boat's outside, moored at the bottom of the garden. So
okay,
yeah.
Good enough. Good enough. Every once in a while, you post photos. You and John are out there doing your thing. Okay, I wanted to tell Paige and Sharon that what we're engaging now is a conversation comparing Mending Wall and Boy Breaking Glass. So I want you guys to listen a little bit to what the conversation is, and then I'd invite you to comment in any way you like, the two of you. And thanks, Chris, for doing the telephony, because I like saying that word. Okay, so Gabby first, opening thoughts about these poems together.
Yeah, I mean, I think both of them are, I guess I want to talk about the kind of tensions or like anxieties that they're both kind of addressing first, which is like, to me, there's, especially now, a very American anxiety about kind of the security of one's space. Like I'm thinking about the kind of like insane next door surveillance where it's like somebody was on the street wearing a hoodie. What's that about? Or Trump's rhetoric about cities being like a crime-filled mess and we need to go fix the city or whatever. To me, like Boy Breaking Glass is a poem that is trying to really redeem the figure of like fear and anxiety for a kind of like security focused America that is like the vandal or the person making trouble or protesting or rioting or something. I think it's really trying to not only understand that psychology, but think of that force not as like destructive, but as creative and or productive. And the Frost, I think, is a little bit, it's more suburban in its scene than it is like urban in the way that Boy Breaking Glass is. But it's again about the way that like we can define the security of our own space, not have to deal with the problem of other people or the inconvenience of others. And I think it's like, I'm a little ambivalent about whether that poem thinks good fences make good neighbors. I know it's something we've talked about, like if that is a total irony or if it is actually subscribing to that kind of suburban division. But to me, I like this pairing because I think they both tack on to the anxiety of just like living around other human beings and dealing with the fact that we don't actually have personal space and property in the way that we fantasize we do.
That's really utterly brilliant. I mean, just amazing. Your comments has convinced me, and I imagine all of us, that these poems are absolutely relevant in such different ways, but they're bringing up similar issues about who gets to have a space and maintain it and not have it broken or violated, and what the value is of meeting at the point where the violation, in one case, the natural violation, although it could be elves, occurs. Yeah, and I think that Brooks understands the power of the elves. I don't mean elves, that's a derogatory term on Frost's part, but the idea that there's some human agency that wants this stuff down and that nature seems to be complying. We're going to go to Dave and then Kamara. Dave, what are your thoughts now?
I really like this pairing a lot. To me, Boy Breaking Glass, in many ways, really celebrates the negative space. I mean, I shall create, if not a note, a whole, if not an overture, a desecration. And maybe it's the many musical allusions, but it reminds me of something one of my music teachers said, especially during soloing. It's not just the notes you play, it's the notes you don't play. And there's a lot of value in that. And comparing that with Mending Wall, the way Mending Wall seems to treat the wall or form or tradition could be as sort of like the straight man in a comedy bit, the proverbial straight man, the normal person against whom the absurd comic character is paired against, because you need that conservative straight representation to show how absurd something is. So I think in that way you could sort of see them working together.
That's great, Dave. Thank you so much. I think that Frost is trying in the poem to create an edifice himself that could withstand the deconstructing that's going on all around him. In that sense, he's conservative. To create a poem that has these lines that are the most iambic pentameter-ish lines in 20th century poetry, and create an edifice, a poem, an anthologizable poem, that we call either Mending Wall, which is describing the activity, a verb, we are mending that wall, or becomes the wall itself, the way you pronounce it, Dave, Mending Wall. This is the wall that's meant for mending. And to be able to create a poetic edifice, the kind of edifice I don't personally like, is quite a feat. Iambic. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill, and on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us. Once again, we keep the wall between us as we go. You cannot fucking break that wall of a poem. Except we do by having the amazing Miss Gwendolyn just go to it. So this is really an interesting conversation. We're going to turn to Kamara next, but Sophia DeRose, would you take a look at the stream and quote a couple of people talking about this conversation?
Yeah. Hannah Linden wrote, if there's a wall, someone will inevitably try to knock it down. One poem answers the other. No? Which I thought was nice.
That's really nice.
Aiden just wrote, Frost tries to hint that walls aren't necessary. Brooks just throws a stone through the window.
Wow.
And then we have some more conversation, but it builds from an initial point. So I'd have to go back a long time.
Okay, great. We're going to turn to Kamara with Amber Rose on deck.
I think that I am getting a little in the words of it all, because I noticed that in Boy Breaking Glass, the last two lines of the first stanza, our beautiful flaw and terrible ornament, our barbarous and meadow little man. And then in Frost, he describes the neighbor. I see him there bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top, in each hand like an old stone, savage,
Incredible.
armed.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wow, okay, neighbor Old Stone Savage Armed over here, barbarous and metal little man over there. But in Brooks, it's like our barbarous and metal little man. And the metal little man and the Barbary could be the window itself, or the silence or the absence, as Dave was talking about earlier. Or it could be, actually the boy breaking the glass, doing the labor. In the Old Stone Savage Arm, it's kind of like I don't know, ironic, or there's something weird going on with the Old Stone Savage Man and Frost that doesn't feel as like clear cut, but they're both talking about this different kind of labor in this like othered, in my head, savage and barbarism are so like racialized and othered too. And so they're both using that kind of language to describe these other people doing this labor. And I'm just I love thinking about these poems together, because I think there are, resonances and disjunctures together. So those are my thoughts on those words.
Those are great thoughts. I mean, I'm feeling like this conversation, I'm sure we're going to take more poems from the cup. This conversation is a really great idea for a webcast. What we've done, in a sense, is created accidentally a seminar about these two poems that are both pivotal and critical to the way week 5 functions and to the way week 5 opens out to the rest of the weeks of ModPo. This conversation about two particular poems is a ModPo-wide conversation. These are the main issues that we grapple with. I'm really excited and proud of us for doing it. I'm almost tempted that we should keep going and get all the voices in before we turn to another poem. But that's just a suggestion in advance. We're going to turn to Amber Rose, followed by Sophia Nas, followed by Paige and Sharon, who are on the phone. And we'll see where we're going to go from there. Amber Rose Johnson.
I'm really loving this conversation. I feel like I'm learning so much about in coming again to Mending Wall, which I haven't looked at in a long time. I too am kind of caught up in the close reading of the words, but is that not the ModPo way? Mm-hmm. I'm looking at these lines in the Brooks poem. Each one other is having different weather. First of all, I love that couplet. But then what immediately follows, it was you, this distinction, it was you who threw away my name, and this is everything I have for me. Like there is a wall actually between the you and me that's clear right there. And each one is having different weather. These dogs, I'm sorry. Each one is having different weather is speaking to that like clear difference and distinction. And so I think they're both kind of thinking about this place of difference. And I feel like actually Brooks is not necessarily saying, because sometimes in a kind of liberal framework, we can overly romanticize the like everybody all together kind of thing, as opposed to being like some of these differences are simply, they're going to be there. So it's not necessarily about breaking down the difference or moving away from difference, but it's like, how do we in the present maybe not even mend the wall, but like tend to that space of difference? How do we walk alongside it? How do we approach it? And they're giving us two different ways of doing that. And I think both are useful, like pedagogical, again, that kind of meta pedagogy is there, maybe just in terms of how we deal with and confront difference between each other.
Ambrose, I think, tell me if I'm getting this wrong, but if we reduce what you said to a one-liner, it would be, I think, taken by themselves, they will speak to the people engaged in the conversations about the themes and concerns separately, and they will go their own way. And that's what poetry criticism or conversations about poets do. But taken together, they create an argument that permits each to make its case, and that's what we could be doing. That is, I'm imagining a conversation which actually does what Dave Poplar is always hoping we would do, to recuperate what's useful in the Frost. And what I'm getting all the feelings saying this. what Frost, the thing that's always nagged me about Frost, Amber Rose, is that he is describing an energy that comes from the breakdown of the wall. There is an energy here. Now, what do we do with that energy? Because Gwendolyn Brooks is saying there is energy in this destruction. And if we just think about it as negative, we're missing the energy. Did I went a little far afield, but are you aligned with what I just said?
Yeah, I mean, that was a lot longer than one sentence, or that was quite a run on. But
Zing.
if I could distill what you said, like, I think that there's a way that we could see these poems as in conversation, like just these poems out in the world on their own, maybe not, but when we engage them in conversation, that they're actually helping us. They help, like together, they help us to think about the difficult work of being in relation amongst difference. Like one could say that we need both of these poems to think in a real life way, because not everyone in the world is excited about what the barbarous metal little man is doing, right? There are real people who are walking alongside the wall and not sure what to do with that energy with Frost. Not sure what to do with that energy breakdown, like I thought you said so beautifully.
Right.
So yeah, I think they work together to bring us into the real space of doing the work of confronting difference.
Yeah. Now, I think each poet in a different context is saying, people, why can't we get along? I mean, in his own kind of somewhat, for me, creepy way, Frost is saying, hey, the poet, speaker, amateur farmer, and the uneducated guy who won't get beyond his father's sayings, they are getting along by mending the wall. They're getting along. They're having a conversation across difference. Brooks is saying the same thing more overtly. The two poems together are saying they're taking the wall that's between them and saying, why cannot we talk across those differences? Which becomes a productive thing rather than a destructive thing. We're going to turn to Sophia Naz for her thoughts, and then to the folks on the phone, and then we're going to have a pivot point to decide what to do with the rest of this conversation. I'm inclined to keep going. Sophia Naz.
So I had two parallel thoughts. One is I'm constantly struck by the sonic energy of Brooks' poem in contrast to the energy of Frost. So in Brooks, it's actually the cry, the sound is also breaking the wall. Like, when someone is singing a really high note and glass shatters. Wow. I feel some of that is happening here, and it keeps on going, that it starts with that, whose broken window is a cry of art. And then again, it's raw, it's sonic, and then the music is in the minors. There's this constant invocation of sound, as sound is breaking the barriers. And of course it does this at the end when, the sonnet, so-called sonnet, breaks down, and then you have a mistake, a cliff. And then I looked at that cliff and I said, hell, this is a giant falling, a giant separation, a giant wall. A cliff is huge, so there's, and then the other thing that struck me was in the line, each to his grief, each to his loneliness and fidgety revenge. And then somehow I find that really relating to, the neighbor and Frost meeting, they are also separate. They're each in their own space, but then again, I don't think they totally understand each other. They definitely have a difference. But it's contrasting, but then there are also there's walking the line in Frost, and there's also the plank, the walking the plank.
Yeah, walking the plank. Yeah.
So it's interesting, once you start to look at resonances, you can find them.
Yeah, I'm curious to know whether we could take any two poems from any week of ModPo and they would work so well together? I think the answer is no, but it would be a fun random exercise. Okay, we're going to turn to Paige and Sharon. I'm assuming that both of you had good enough sound to hear what we said. I'm going to turn to Paige first for any thoughts that you have, Paige, at this point in this conversation.
Okay, well, I have a couple of things. One, I will tell you that in LA, we meet once a month and we regularly take 2 poems from Modpo and do this kind of exploration. We do a close read for each poem and we often end up comparing. So it's delightful. I encourage everyone to do it. And one thing I want to look at is the way the poems look on the page. If you look at Mending Wall, the poem itself looks very solid. It looks very regular. There are, some dips and valleys on the line ends, but it's still pretty comfortably connected, right? But then you look at Boy Breaking Glass, and it's much more jagged. There are openings. There are places of emptiness. And I feel like these really help to illuminate the text of the poem for me. Also, I want to look at that. Sophia really got me on that last stanza of Boy Breaking Glass. It was you who threw away my name, and this is everything I have for me. And then that takes me down to a sloppy amalgamation, which kind of is a rock wall, right? It's this, not Frost's wall is very, regular, but a lot of rock walls, you look at it and go, boy, somebody just tossed those rocks in a pile and now we have a wall. And I think it's interesting to think about what creates barriers and what breaks barriers.
Paige, that is
both of those.
That is really terrific, and I love your attention to sloppy amalgamation, because the question for Modpo is, does it always, you know the answer to the question, but does it always have to be, as in traditional poetry, that the verse needs to be beautiful because it coheres and comes together, right? Something that Alfred Lord Tennyson might have aspired to. That sloppy amalgamation is our inheritance from the modernist revolution, and it becomes political when Gwendolyn Brooks and other poets take it. Because amalgamation is itself a kind of collage or a cubist coming together of unlike parts, and then sloppy admits, the way the Baroness might, admits that we do not have our shit together. And that can be beautiful just as the art made by a boy throwing a rock. That is great, Paige. Thank you. And the SoCal group that meets once a month is ongoing. So if anybody's in Southern California, I can connect you to Paige. If you write to me, I'll put you in touch with Paige. Sharon Wells in England, what do you have to say? What do you think?
Paige and Dave have both touched on things that I was thinking about, or I was looking at the two poems together. Typographically, because that's what, as a graphic designer and typesetter, that's how I often look at things. I've noticed the layout, the difference in layout of them, the way that the Frost poem is very dense without any breaks between it. There's no stanzas, and quite regular if you look at the right-hand edge of it. And the Gwendolyn Brooks has got lots of spaces in it, which also I thought tied in with the musicality thing again, which I think Dave mentioned about the importance of, in graphics as well, it's the importance of white space. So in music, the importance of having holes and gaps between any denseness of the music. And I think with the Mending Wall, that sort of ties in with Mending Wall, that here in England we have a tradition of, particularly in the Cotswold stone walls, where they might look as though they've been thrown together, but they're actually very, very carefully placed. The skill in the way they're layered up together. That may exist in parts of over the States as well. I don't know. But the poem the Mending Wall poem feels as though it's been constructed in the same way, careful way that you'd construct a wall. I don't mean to say by that Boy Breaking Glass isn't carefully constructed, because I think it's careful the way those breaks have fallen in. And a couple of things just jumped out at me. With the obvious of the boy breaking glass, and you've talked about breaking windows and the whole imagery that brings up of rebellion. But if you're thinking of it in the terms of rebellion, there's some words in Robert Frost about the groundswell, and I just thought you could almost think about a groundswell happening with the boy breaking glass.
Yes.
A groundswell of change, maybe.
Great observation. Yeah, that's great. Sharon, I'm going to ask you and Paige, we really appreciate your comments, to hang up and listen to the rest of the conversation about this, but we're so grateful to you both, Paige Pulsine, Sharon Wells. Thank you guys. Love you very much. Appreciate this. Just a quick reaction. Bye-bye. Just a quick reaction to one of Sharon's points, and then I have an idea about the rest of the time before final words to stay on this topic and get everybody else into the conversation. With apologies to Lainey, who had teed up another question for us. Yeah, I mean, Sharon is a visual person. She's come to ModPo as a designer, and she's absolutely right that what Frost is doing is creating a wall of a poem, even though the wall in the poem is falling down. He's making sure that the wall gets maintained poetically. So it is an ars poetica, and it is a meta poem in that sense. And Gwendolyn Brooks is making sure that no wall, no edifice is being built in the poetry, because it tends to keep people out. She wants people in. So I would say that being rough about this and being perhaps unfair to Frost, I would say that Brooks is writing an inclusive poem, a poem that is itself inclusive. Okay, here's my thought. We'll turn to some folks who haven't weighed in on this topic of these two poems, and that would be Lainey, Kate, and Jason, for starters. And I would ask, this is going to be hard, but I would ask the three of you, and then the rest of us, if we have time, to imagine a conversation between, not just among us with these poems between us, but imagine a conversation, intersubjectivity, imagine a conversation between Brooks and Frost. So your choice is either to imagine what Brooks would say to Frost, or what Frost would say to Brooks. This is so hard, but I think it'll be productive. So, Sophia DeRose, you're up first. Sophia DeRose, Lainey.
Say my name.
I now did. Sophia DeRose, Lainey, Kate, and Jason. What would Brooks say to Frost? Or what would Frost say to Brooks? Speak in the voice.
So, no. So, I'm going to try to answer this question the best I can.
That's your way of saying you won't.
No, I'm trying. So when I put Mending Wall in the cup, it's because I typically read this poem without like a generous spirit. I think that the separation it advocates for is not always universally useful. But I was thinking about it differently when I considered perhaps the act of mending. Like if I'm going to consider a wall in our real world political climate, that's incredibly difficult for me to view generously. But if I'm considering the act of mending in our current world and the idea of like a doctor versus a patient, I do feel like the boundary between those two, the knowledge versus the need, makes the actual act of mending and that boundary feel more secure. So I was thinking of that as a way for me to give this poem kind of a generous understanding and a generous reading. However, I think that the anonymity of the neighbor and the speaker is something that is kind of celebrated in the Frost poem. And I think it's something that is critiqued by Gwendolyn Brooks in Boy Breaking Glass, where the furthering of invisibility happens because we don't have anyone attributed to the dialogue. And so I think she'd perhaps critique him for that move.
She'd say you say there's dialogue, but we don't really have a sense of dialogue.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to turn to Lainey. And Lainey, you're off the hook. You don't have to play that game, but I have another one I want to throw at you so you can choose. The alternative way of responding to this for Lainey, followed by Kate, followed by Jason, and then anybody else, goes back to what Gabby said first, which I thought was an utterly brilliant comment, which is to say, in the current discourse about immigration, and also who feels comfortable in what space and how do we delimit the spaces, that whole thing. What do these poems contribute to that current discourse about immigration and belonging and walls? Would we read either or both of these poems to help us understand the current discourse? So that's the other option that you have. Lainey, what do you want to do with this?
All right. I want to talk around these difficult questions. I mean, I think the way that I would connect immigration to what I had wanted to say is to speak to the urgency for safety for people, needing a place to be and not having it. And what I had in mind to say after listening to everybody, I also love this conversation. I think it's so great, is how the two poems have a really different sense of time. And in the Gwendolyn Brooks poem, there's this intense urgency around the inequity in architecture and protests, and the cry for art for this kid. It's urgent. It has to happen right now. And the Robert Frost poem, there's this more meandering sense, like this sense of privilege, like I'm walking in this pretty place and it's like, been inherited in all these generations and this beautiful wall and who's going to take care of it. And there's almost maybe an ecological question about the land and the plants and the cows that aren't there and don't need to be separated, but it's a totally different time scale. So we've got like urgent and a longer version of time. I mean, the issues go through time in both poems, but the urgency is different. And it's urban, whereas this one, obviously, the Robert Frost poem is obviously not urban.
Yeah, no, that's really great. And also, Lainey, the speaker of the Frost poem thinks of it as an outdoor game. And it's a little less, or at least faux less serious, pretend less serious. That's great. And also in the Frost poem, we have the tension between a long-time intruder upon the rural scene, the speaker, who's kind of a amateur farmer. We get the sense, like Frost. And the neighbor is just someone who's inherited from father and before that father. And there's a patrilinear saying that we just need to have fences because we just need to have fences. So the newer resident is saying, I don't know if that's true, but I'm going to play along with the game of being part of this patrilineage. Thank you, Lainey. And Kate, what are your thoughts about this whole thing?
I'm not sure this answers your questions, but
That's
I'm
right.
thinking
Nobody answers my questions. That's okay.
Right. That's the nature of the game. I'm thinking about power balance in each poem and the nature of the barriers in the poem, that how in Mending Wall we have a stone wall, presumably with two white men of equal-ish place in the world, putting the wall back together, and the window in Brooks's poem and how the action of casting the rock through it is a one-way action, and who's on the other side of that window, who lives there, what does that person have the power to do in response to that act of violence? So, and I think, and the nature of a window is it's seemingly two-way, it's transparent. There's a seeming equality to it that isn't actual. And thinking about national borders, that seems to be the case in this country at the moment, where there are a lot of people with their faces pressed up to the window. But it's not penetrable.
If you had to extract a politics of who belongs of immigration from the Frost, this is unfair. Although we do know Frost's social positions during the 1930s. I mean, he wrote a poem where, a rural dweller who has a homestead, there's a couple of, he calls them hobos, wandering on the road, and there's a whole dilemma about whether you feed them or accept them or have them sleep in your... He does deal with these issues, but if you could make up the position that can be extracted from the speaker of this poem on immigration, what would it be?
Gosh.
It's such an unfair question.
I mean, I can imagine a position he might take on immigration. At the moment, I'm stalling at the poem and what it suggests about what he might say.
Yeah. Well, I'll try it and you react.
Okay, yeah.
We need the wall because it's the reason we come together. It separates us, and it separates us so that we're distinct. We have distinct positions, and the intersubjectivity or dialogue only occurs when we have the wall. So don't let the wall go down. The wall that separates us and separates our land is necessary because it creates the ceremony that is beautiful, and beauty is made by walls.
Right. But given that they're presumably two wealthy-ish white men on either side of the wall, what is the wall in fact separating, and what kind of tension is keeping it there?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they're wealthy. I think the guy on the other side of the wall is a hard scrabble, long-held, he has some land but nothing else. He's not educated. He just thinks about his father's saying. I think he's the Trump voter.
Oh yeah, I get that for sure.
And the other guy is like a fancy pants, poet speaker types who has all these ideas. I mean, that's the way the poem has been taken traditionally. So it's a conversation between the elite poetic elite and the Trump voter.
I do get that. But they each have the privilege of their position in the world.
They have land. Yeah. And they have a wall. Yeah. I may be thinking too much about this, but when I hear Gabby and Sophia Duros talk about this, it makes me I get full of feelings about our current situation, how it is we ever are going to have a conversation across this particular wall. And Frost is kind of holding out for the possibility in his own Frostian sort of way. Before we turn to Jason, after which we're going to do final words, extended final words, Gabby just wants to add something.
I just wanted to say, I feel like the thing that both of these poems know is that property is defensive. To have property, the thing that you get from property is that it's yours. It's my house, my space, my thing. And sometimes the defensiveness of property is very useful, right? We all need shelter. We all need a kind of domain that feels like it makes our living happen. So, but the thing that I feel like both of these are dealing with is that the defensiveness of property is also a kind of really anxiety provoking thing. And I feel like the reason I connect it to the current moment is I feel like right now is a moment where so much about having property is antagonistic. I have this in spite of everyone around me, in spite of the the blight around me. This is my space, my space. I need to defend it. And I think like to me, what's happening in the frost is like the environment is not really listening to those boundaries. Like there's a ecological mix that is a little bit upsetting to the kind of suburban division. In the Brooks, somebody is actively breaking those divisions and saying like, no, this property thing is not gonna happen under on my watch. And so there's an ego investment in our property, right? That this is like me and my space. I still don't really know what I think the kind of politics of the frost are necessarily, but to me, like the suburban scene that it's in is very much based on everybody having their own kind of plot of space and having limited and controllable interaction with
Right.
others.
Right.
Whereas the urban space relies on like you are around other people. You don't have another choice in that. Like there are people there with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the anxiety that motivates both of these things.
I'm going to say something as a transition to Jason. And Jason, you should feel free to say whatever you want that's on your mind about these two poems. But I'm just going to try to cause a transition to occur to take from what Gabby's saying, which is a sucky situation, and to try to place blame. I think what's at fault is all the way even through the modernist revolution, even through the New York school with all their collaborative energies, even the languagey people who love to break down the barriers of individual authorship. I think what's at fault is the poem as a poem that stands and does its thing and does or doesn't enter into a conversation, but mostly doesn't unless stuff like these 90 minutes occur. These two would never have been in conversation. And I think so what's at fault here is the fetishization of the poem as a poem. Mending Wall is very hard to hack into. Very hard to hack into. Because it stands and it's the I'm going to read a few poems and I'll have one more poem. Mending Wall. It's the encore poem. It's the poem of poems. It's the poem that gets to say, this is a poem. I am the poet who makes a poem. And ModPo, of course, is built on the idea of talking between and among poems, but the poem makers did not typically want to do that. And that is a kind of ownership that winds up creating the problems that Brooks is working hard to mend. So I think there's a lot at fault in the poem-making thinking, even through it. Two generations of people would stand on the other side of the idea of the wall. They still didn't do the thing that would break down those walls. Anyway, Jason, what are your thoughts about this? And then everybody, we're going to go around and everybody's going to get a final thought on this conversation, or you can sing happy birthday again to Sophia, or you can just promote your office hours, whatever you want to do. And we're also going to ask Sophia to read a poem at the end. Okay, Jason, what are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, the poem itself, I mean, if we just think of authorship, what we're doing today is placing these two poems into a dialogue that is certainly not like a desecration, but it's a means of opening them up beyond which we're going to see plenty of examples of as ModPo continues. But we get a good um like I'm thinking, I mean, the other issue at hand is something like AI and the giant, I mean, like, and copyright. Um, but I think that we get, I'm sorry, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, everybody. We're going to turn to final thoughts, and you are invited to say more about this conversation, which I have loved as a new format for webcasting. But anyway, so we're going to go around final thoughts of any sort, and we're going to start with Lainey Brown, and Amber Rose will be on deck.
I just want to say also how much I've enjoyed this conversation and also having Amber Rose and Gabby and Kamar here. It's such a pleasure
Yay.
to see you. And I want to ballyhoo my office hours, which are Mondays at 5 p.m. We're having a great time. Thank you to everybody who's coming, and please join us. And also to Ballyhoo Beat Week coming up from New York City. It's bound to be a super fun webcast. It's always a fun webcast, but it's going to be on the road. So hope you can join us.
And thank you, Lainey Brown, for doing all the curating and coordinating for our trip to New York. Very excited. Amber Rose is up, and Kate will be on deck.
Yeah, I also want to say how grateful I am for this conversation and how nice it is to dip back into ModPo and feel like, once again, I learned so many things about these poems that I've read a million times. My final word is going to be imagining if we had another hour and a half and brought a third poem in, and if that poem were a one-act play. Because although there is not a wall, the distinction between the man in blue and the black in man, I think mirrors this kind of like really distinct one side and the other side.
Yeah.
And I wonder if Evie Shockley, I wonder what she would bring for thinking about working across and with and against and in between difference.
Yeah. Would you, well, two thoughts. One is we'll reach out to Evie, who's a friend of ModPo and the Writers House, and present this possibility, see what kind of reaction we get. But also, would you read a line or two from the poem that's most relevant to the point you're making? Do you have it in front of you?
I do have it in front of me. Yes. The black man sees the man in blue, bees the blues in man, demands the blues back off, deems the blues black, does the blues deed, deeds the blues back, lacks what the blacks need, needs the truer blue, bleeds the true black.
Wow. That is so cool. I'm glad that got into the record because it was in the cup and we didn't get to it. All right. Thank you. Kate is up and Jason is on deck.
I think I'll just mention that my office hours at 2 tomorrow, and I would love to continue this conversation then.
Sounds perfect. Jason's up. Gabby is on deck.
Yeah, my office hours are at 8 tonight, and I will be there, and look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you, Jason. I forgot who I put on deck.
Me.
Gabby's up, and Dave is on deck.
Well, first of all, I just want to say it's been really nice to visit for these 2 weeks and be in the ModPo mode. What I want to say is actually, as I was looking for favorite poems of the week, I realized that we have like a plethora of poems that either end with or are entirely parataxes, like lists or comma, like connected clauses. So I think the most famous for all of us is the Gwendolyn Brooks "Who Has Not Congress," "Lobster," "Love," "Luau," etc. But "Ballad of Orange and Grape" ends on a corner in East Harlem, garbage, reading, a deep smile, rape, forgetfulness, a hot street of murder, misery, withered hope, etc. And Green Light ends by Kenneth Fearing, bought at a cut rate at the green light at 9 o'clock, borrowed or bought to look well, to ennoble, to prevent disease, to entertain, to have, broken or sold, or given away, or used and forgotten, or lost. And Ember Rose reading from the Shockley just reminded me that that whole poem is a kind of parataxis.
Yeah.
So I'm mentioning this all to say, like, it does seem to me that one of the nice things about the conversation we've just had is it points out to me how much property is such a big theme with the material this week, coming from the socialist poets in the 30s, Harlem Renaissance, getting into these formalists in the 50s. And I think somebody should write a thing or say a thing or have a discussion about a thing some other time where we connect the style of parataxis to the politics of property. I think that would be great.
Yeah.
Somebody should.
That is great. Somebody needs to write that book, I think, because the books that have been written about the poetry of the 1930s have not done a very good job thinking about how the materialist, anti-material, anti-capitalist sentiment wound up putting a whole lot of stuff, lists of things, in the poems, in the art. All right. So if you get
next book.
Oh God, please, not another one of those. But I think that if you get to the teens, and then you get Dadaism of the teens in the 20s, and you get Picasso-like collaging, right? You get Duchamp putting things, miscellaneous things together, all that proto-conceptualism, and then you get to the Depression, where economic privation causes us to think that getting stuff into the art, sculpture, the way the Baroness did it, getting plumbing supplies or, urinals, and then putting it as art and then writing it essentially transforms something into the nothingness. And you go back to Whitman, and it's like, that's it. That's totally it, right? Yeah, that's really good. Gabby, maybe you, once you get your job and you're just sitting there with your feet up on your desk, eating bonbons and smoking gauloises, you can finally write the book of this.
That's quite an image that you have for me. I mean, I kind of like it. I'm down for that reality. But
feet up on the desk, eating bonbons.
Eating bonbons and smoking
and I see the cat.
that's...
I see the cat walking around on the desk.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, good.
The cat is accurate. The bonbons and the galoshes, I'm not sure.
May it happen to you, friend Gabby. Thank you. Dave is up, and Kate will be. Kate's already done this. Dave is up, and Kamara is on deck.
First, I wanted to say that it's great to have Amber Rose and Kamara and Gabe back in the fold for this. And second, I'm still thinking about that imagined conversation between Brooks and Frost. Thinking ahead to week 6 and thinking about Jack Kerouac's principles of spontaneous prose, I'm thinking about how the conversation would go if he joined it. It became a 3-way conversation between those people.
I love it. Thank you. You answered my question. I appreciate that. Kamara is up, and Sophia DeRose is on deck.
Well, thank you so much for having me back. This was so fun. And Boy Breaking Glass, spoiler alert, probably my favorite poem, at least top 2 in ModPo. So, so fun to be talking about this. And I was like, since I haven't looked at ModPo Plus in a while, I was perusing it earlier today and watched a little bit of Erica Hunt's inauguration poem for Liz McGill, which was like flashback in time, not too far back, but recent past. Anyways,
a lot has happened since then.
Yes. And the epigraph for that poem is, "What is it to talk as if the world you know is the world?" From Dion Brand. And in the poem, there's a lot of addresses to dear neighbor, dear ally, dear adjacency. And I just want to throw that in as another poem that feels like could be talked about in all of the relation to this, and especially thinking about it with the lens of like time and stakes and power that like Lainey was kind of talking about, the inauguration of a president of Penn, different stakes, different power.
Your alma mater.
It's true. It's true.
Kamara Brown, I think everybody's already said this, but what an absolute delight to see you and be in dialogue with you. It's just amazing. I'm so glad we're doing this. And is it the case that you're going to come back another week? I think might be.
I think in a few weeks. Yes, that is the plan.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been a pleasure. It's so fun.
Great.
And so good to see your faces, everybody.
Yeah. Okay, good. Sophia DeRose and then Sophia Naz will wind us up.
I'll be brief. I just wanted to say that this morning in my office hours, I was joined by Oppie, Lou, Vero, Robin, Jane, Barbara, Stanley, Kat, Dave B, and Vijaya. And we had a really interesting and personal conversation about lines for an abortionist office. And I just wanted to thank those folks for being vulnerable in an office hours space and having such personal, visceral, and amazing reactions to the poem. And I'm grateful that I was a part of the conversation. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Sophia Naz, would you be willing to read Real ID, your poem Real ID, as a way of saying farewell?
With pleasure. Real ID. At 9 a.m., the line at the DMV snakes around the red brick building to the scant shade of the pepper tree. Peppercorns pink as teenage pimples dangling on neurons of short fuses squeeze past into present. A window of time is number chit and nervous ticked off by endless taking of tolls. Roses surely wilted by now because you forgot, running late, the summer almost over, but bearing its last white hot teeth overhead. No breaks in time, all this will also fray, petal in heat, thrilled to pedal the bells and whistles of a vehicle, taken off at dizzying speed, rubber stamped, the body adrift, floating, flipping over, and over there they can help you. Somebody, anybody, please help us. Now serving B52 at window number 9.
Sophia Naz, the poem is Real ID. And can you name, will you name the latest 2 titles of your recent books so that people can go out and buy them?
The last 2 titles are Open Zero and Bark Archipelago.
Wonderful. And thank you, Sophia Naz. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, Al.
It's really delightful to have you back at the Writers' House. I want to thank Chris Martin, Mr. Telephony, Magda Andrews-Hoke. Thank you, as always, Magda. Really excited about our New York trip. The gang is going to get a chance in New York. We have this tradition of spitballing dinners. So we're going to think about new ideas for ModPo. So if anybody has ideas to share in advance, please let us know. And Zach Cardner, amazing. Paige Polsine, love you so much. And Sharon Wells, you too. Please say hi to John and your wonderful pup and enjoy the canals. And we have just finished at exactly 90 minutes in. It's amazing. We do it well. Love you all. Thanks for joining us. Lainey Brown, please take care of that toe. All right? And Gabby, get a job. You should do the Niedecker thing. I'm working here. I'm condensing at my desk. No layoff from this condensery. I guess that's
really true, though. I really wish that condensery brought in a little more moolah, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, Laureen faced that problem too because, she had that little cabin up in Wisconsin. But maybe we'll visit you if you go to the cabin in Wisconsin. We'll visit you.
Sounds good. I appreciate it.
Okay, good. All right. Love you, Gabby. All right. Good night, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Good night, too. And we'll see you next week, Thursday, not Wednesday, New York City, live from New York. It's the ModPo Webcast next week by Amber Rose Johnson. Be good up there in Canada. Bye, everybody.